Steve, we're back. You're back from vacation. I'm back from vacation, although of different overlapping time, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure people miss this.
Okay. I did hear that the Samsel daughters went to Nashville, and did they provide you with a play-by-play of their experience in Nashville?
No, 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 because I do with mine. So I knew
Okay.
maybe it was on social media someplace that I didn't look, but I
Okay.
like
I'm
we
just
got some
curious.
pictures,
Okay.
we got some whatever. I tried. No, I have learned that I don't want that, and I'm not supposed to provide that. So next time I
I'm
go,
not
I will
saying that you're not
keep it to
supposed to.
myself.
I enjoy it.
Maybe you'll be the ones getting it. It's at
Me and
least you're not the
Russ.
one that says, "Dad, that's enough."
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's fair. Um, the name of this podcast, which took a week off. I think that was like our first week off since like last year, like this time last year. So I'm proud of us on that one. Is called Stuff Summer Says with
Steve.
Steve. We've got some financials to go over. That'll be the crux of the conversation. I have a feeling today.
Huh?
I want to talk some hockey. What else did you say? Oh, we want to talk a little bit about blue white, and then you have old guy, young guy, which I think is I am absolutely fascinated at the text that spawned your old guy, young guy,
Okay.
in the thing in it. So let's let's begin, shall we? Where to begin specifically with the numbers? I think the big news, in case you've missed it, is that the financial report for the 2024-2025 school year, which is the year that Penn State went to the college football playoff, is out and about. And because Steve and I are probably two of three people that I can think of that actually care about this thing, we will now go through it, not line by line, but pretty damn near close. I think really though the big takeaway is that Penn State athletics is now a $250 million business. I think that's a big thing to highlight. The other bit of news in there is the NIL distribution coming out, and we can kind of see some framework around that. And then the third thing I think is the contributions, and I want to talk through some of the math there as we kind of go through that. I feel like that was the bullet points of our financial discussion today, right, Steve?
Okay. No, that seems fair. Like you dug deeper than me, and the story that I read on the blog, the Stuff Summer Says with Steve blog, said somebody's going to do all the work, and you just have to read. So I just read, have some reactions, and
Okay.
yeah,
All
jump
right.
into it. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, Penn State made 254,867,598 and it spent 254,643,919. That equals 23 or $223,000 roughly in profit. The main crux of why we look at maybe more so we don't dive into the profitability, but it is important that Penn State is profitable. I think Anna and I were talking about this week. Would you agree that Penn State's athletic department should operate more or less like a nonprofit in that
Yes,
it
yeah,
should
and I think
spend
it
every
does.
dollar
Yeah,
that it brings in?
yeah, yeah, and I
So
think
it's
it does for the most part.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So and I think that was a
That's why the numbers are interesting because I
right.
think people who are good at nonprofits make sure their numbers balance. So it depends where you put stuff.
Yeah, and I think this is the second lowest profit margin that we've seen since you and I have kind of started keeping tracking tab on this. So I think that was big. Um, Going back to the contributions, as I pull that up here, that was really the biggest change in this financial paperwork. It seemed like this year more than ever. I don't know if it was because of the house stuff. I don't know if it was because of NIL. It seemed like money kind of sort of shifted around where it was, how it was earmarked, I guess would be the best way to say it. But I was particularly interested in the contributions thing, and that's what I want to spend a little bit of time here on. And I looked at it year over year. So year over year on the whole, it was up from 37 million to 64.6 million. So a little less than half, a little less than double, but pretty damn near close double what it was from the previous year. I think what's interesting about that was if you kind of go through this document and paperwork, where the contributions increased, the money also decreased or increased going back out into
Mhm.
the ecosystem. And that some of that equates to NIL, but some of it is really interesting to me. I sent a list of about 7 questions to Penn State. I haven't heard back. I know Ben Jones has not heard back on his financial questions. He would be the third person that cares as much about this as him and I, or you and I. But I do think that this is where the numbers started to like click a little bit for me. That clearly these contributions just were going to NIL. So pulled the numbers. When we look at baseball, right, their contributions were up 43% year over year. But if you subtract the NIL out, that number only goes up by 5% year over year in terms of the actual contribution. Same thing with football. In fact, if you remove the NIL dollars that Penn State football spent, or what is purported in here, there's actually a 2% decrease year over year in contribution, which that kind of somewhat relates back to the ticket numbers we can also discuss and dive in on. I do think there is one set of numbers in here that was probably the most interesting to me, which was Penn State men's hockey. Their contributions went up 235% year over year. If we pull the NIL out, it went up 202%. And to me, I think that is the indicator of what success can do for an athletic program. And I kind of feel like we can also discuss that with the tickets related to basketball, wrestling as well. All of that is to say, I think the contribution situation, I'm confused by it. I'm rambling on here to say I'm confused by it because hopefully somebody that is listening to this podcast can enlighten us a little bit more about why the contribution margin was earmarked this way versus we also saw this. I think you see this with how Penn State reported its parking and tickets, or parking and novelties revenue, and then its licensing revenue over the last year. Basically it worked out to be about the same, but was kind of where the bucket went. All of that is to say, I think I want to know both the contributions, why they increased so much. I also want to know, okay, if Penn State is this the total amount of Penn State is paying its players, and that's Penn State writ large, or is that Penn State plus Happy Valley United? I tend to believe that this was just Penn State cutting the check and not Happy Valley United elsewhere. And so how much more were those organizations getting in this process?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that stood out to me, the way the numbers look, because what it was, 18 million out of the 20.5 was spent on NIL. But at the same time, now I guess this was last season, the season before last, right? So this past season, we know that from the audio that was leaked, that they're paying $30 million in the roster. Maybe even Kraft said that publicly for football, right? So that number, and it's hard for me to believe that, oh, I guess that probably did just happen this year because they thought they were going to be more successful. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I think you're only seeing a piece. I think the NIL numbers from athletics are only a piece of what the players are getting. And for me, the interesting thing of all the revenue streams was hockey success, and basketball not as much, and wrestling success. I mean, and those numbers felt to me the most, I want to say genuine, but that's the most not in an altered bucket or an altered state. Because I think with all accounting, all nonprofit accounting, you can find a place for stuff to tell your story of the way that you want to tell it. Novelties and licensing. You may decide to put something there, and that's what you say your process is. But a couple of years later, you may change it, and that may change because those things are close things. So the ticket revenue is interesting, and then I think the perceived loss of football, again, before this season, but that ticket sale or whatever, you're going to say, it does feel like, yes, people would kill for the 98% or whatever they have of season tickets, but there's still some that need sold all the time.
Right.
And I think that's where that shows up too.
I think that's big. Let's stop on the NIL thing, because you have been an advocate for however many years that we've been doing this podcast, that you want to see the numbers, show me the numbers. We don't necessarily know what Drew Aller or Nicholas Singleton individually were making, but we know that 13 million of these dollars went to Penn State football last year. We know, and I can pull that
2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah.
And we know, a lot of those other costs, as I fumble around my own website and can't find where to pull it up. It's right here. I just couldn't find the link. Let's run through those real quick. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sports reported that got revenue shared or revenue kickback. 13 million to football, 3 million to men's basketball, 1.4 million to wrestling, 300,000 to baseball. That surprised me. 110 to women's basketball, 95 to men's hockey, 50 to men's lacrosse, and 10 to men's tennis and women's volleyball. I guess back to my original question here. Are you happy? Do you feel some relief? How do you feel now seeing some of these numbers?
I think it's good that they share, and I think they tell you too, the numbers translate to how the teams perform realistically. I mean, I bet you, again, this was 2 seasons ago, but women's basketball is, I would, if you compare that to other teams that are winning in the conference or winning nationally, that's a low number. Men's basketball is probably a low number compared to what teams in the conference and are winning nationally for. Football from this report will be higher next year. And yeah, it's interesting to me that people who have the money to give and support these things, who in their real jobs are looking for ROIs or KPIs or pick your indicator and want to know what's going on. But when it comes to their sports fandom, they're like, yeah, hey, take my money. Hey, don't tell me how it's going exactly. And I just find that interesting. And maybe the big donors are getting that, they're getting told that, but those mid and lower level people aren't. And those are the people who feel like they're getting hammered twice and 3 times. Maybe not so much now because it's evened out a little bit, or
Right.
at least it's calmed down a little bit. But they're the ones who feel like they're being asked to do more. So I don't understand. I feel like they deserve to be told that because they are literally stakeholders and direct givers to what's happening. And I don't know why they wouldn't want to ask if they aren't. So yeah, I think anything like this is helpful.
I think you raise a good point there, because 2024, 2025, above all, felt like the first year, or maybe even compared to this most recent football season. And this school year is still not over. But the whole span of from the time that women's soccer started until baseball ended in the summer last year, I felt like last school year felt like the most oppressive of the hey, we need your money, give us your money. Actually, we have no clue how to get money, but somebody's gonna figure out and ask us for money. Like, it was, I think you make a good point there, and I think it has slowed down a little bit. Um, and I'm interested to see, to your point. So this is 18 million. This is pre the 20 million that the House settlement included,
Right.
but it seems like Penn State they were able to start the process earlier. Doesn't seem like they opted in for the whole 20 million or whatever, but pretty darn close. So next year we assume it'll be 20.5 million will be the total. And we'll see how that's earmarked again. I do think it is interesting, to your point. You do see a little bit of reward for men's lacrosse. They went to the Final Four. However, I was surprised that women's volleyball being so low. I was, because they won a national championship this year. This is that season.
Right.
And also men's tennis being on here just generally surprised me. I want to know.
But again, these may be the
story.
athletic
Yeah.
department contributions and not the Happy Valley United ones.
Right.
And baseball got a number and they did well. I guess,
Yes.
why were you surprised about that one? Did you think it would be more for that success?
I thought it was. I just thought it overall. I was surprised to see that high of a number, and
Okay.
to me, that is a indicator. And we want to be. I've been trying not to make this, but like, it's an indicator, and we want to be successful in this sport, or we want to be more competitive in this sport, which I think has matched. I think with Mike Gambino, like, that has matched the MO of why Pat Kraft hired him, and really the MO we've seen around Penn State baseball, and we know that the big Japanese signing is coming next year, right? So I think I think that was a confirmation, if you will, in some of these numbers. Let's get into tickets because I think that that was another interesting point here as well. So yes, football tickets fell by 0.43%. That was the first time I could find back to the COVID year that ticket sales decreased year over year. I if I recall correctly, there was not a price increase on the ticket baseline. However, the donation fee was what increased 2024, which we talked about a little bit, and that might be one of the reasons why contributions went up year over year. But yeah, I mean, it's still 402 fewer tickets sold, and I think that's interesting. And it'll be interesting. That'll be a number to look at next year to do the math on if we assume prices stayed relatively the same.
What was it's not this this was the season before they went to playoff that season. What was the home game? What was that home schedule?
That was
Like, who was the
Washington.
game?
That was
Oh yeah, because Washington was the whiteout on Peacock.
yeah, UCLA was
Okay.
there wasn't a lot
Okay. I mean,
there,
I'm just asking. That's
which is
another
a good
piece of
call
it.
out as well. There, but I mean, most of that, right, is season ticket sales. I would,
Right.
or a hefty
I
portion
would
of
think
it.
so. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
I think the most interesting of it all, though, is the another kind of confirmation of performance or stature, as we kind of understand this. The wrestling team essentially only missed outselling men's basketball by $9,000, and I think I could probably should have went and looked this up, right? But I don't think there weren't as many BJC dolls that season.
There were 2.5. There were
Okay.
2 in the last minute when they had
Right, that
two
was right. They had
main
to
ones,
reschedule
and
the
then
one.
the late they rescheduled one that they drew like 7,000 people.
I can't imagine that we will get this report in 2027 and do this in 2027 and it won't show a higher number for
Oh, it'll have to
it,
for
for
what's this year.
wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it'd be shocking if it didn't.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I do think that is, as we get closer to the wrestling postseason here, I do think that's an interesting like conversation I want to have at some point. Is like, what is the value of a good wrestling program, right? Nationally, what is the value for the Penn State brand to have a good wrestling program versus a perennial
Do you think there is value to the Penn State brand?
to the Penn State? When you say, do you mean added value to the Penn State brand?
Well, it's maybe I guess we don't want to go there now, but I am. It's not like wrestling is going to be on ESPN. I mean, it is, ironically enough, it is on ESPN, but it's not getting you more attention.
This is the crux of what I've been struggling with men's basketball's performance all season long, and I think we've talked about this a couple times now. It's like if you're not going to invest money in to Penn State basketball, which it would be difficult for us to pull all 18 the other Big Ten schools. Not all of them are publicly available, but we would assume that this plus things we've heard plus articles that have been written, this is very much the bottom half of the Big Ten in terms of investment. You're telling me that there is a better, going back to our ROI, there is a better ROI in pumping up and supporting the wrestling team, and that's not knocking the wrestling team. But why do we treat the wrestling team with all of this attention when we invested into men's and women's basketball, for that matter? Nationally, there would probably be a little bit more return on investment, a little bit more energy, a little bit more money flowing to a broader audience with basketball, I guess is the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, I mean, I know now we're mixing our financial year from a year ago with current events that happened today, but there is, I guess I would be shocked if Penn State wrestling ever got the airtime adjacent that Penn State basketball got today, with a basketball player making his announcement to not pick Penn State,
Right.
but at least Penn State was in the mix.
Right.
You're just not going to get that. Now there's no revenue there for the department straight up. So, I mean, there's no direct line, but the direct line for more revenue for athletics requires a spend to invest in men's basketball to get more butts in seats at men's basketball because the team is good. And that's a risky proposition because you know what you're going to make if you don't do it. And you're going to make a profit of a couple $250,000 after making all the money overall. So do you want to worry about spending more that might put you underneath that underwater, and you don't know if the return's going to happen. So I understand why it doesn't happen, but that's the only revenue to be found probably in the whole athletic department. New revenue would be men's basketball season ticket or ticket attendance stuff because the team was good.
And when you go through, I mean, I think we talked about it a little bit here. I mean, there was they basically effectively almost lost money on the concessions. I can let me do a control F on this article here. Um, I mean, there's a lot of metrics in here. Yeah, they reported a $12,000 loss in revenue from program novelty parking and concessions for Penn State men's basketball. Or like, and I think that's a fascinating. I think that might be why we have seen the women's team move down to Rec Hall, right?
Oh, sure. I
And
mean, because you don't have to rent the BJC and it makes sense and it looks better in there.
it wouldn't surprise me if the men did the same thing. I still am. I know there is the sanctity of having wrestling wrestle at Rec Hall, right? And that is the experience and the authentic rawness of wrestling. But at the same time, like, as I have said, as people every time we do a podcast interview have said, build a culture, force them to play at Rec Hall, build something around it there, at least on the men's side, and see what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, and there would be found revenue, not national relevance like you would get with basketball, because it's just not going to happen with wrestling. And I'm a wrestling fan, I'm a wrestling season ticket holder. I love the sport. It's just not going to resonate nationally. But there is found revenue. You could probably find another $500,000 by moving a couple more matches to the Jordan Center, even having to pay for the Jordan Center, the ticket. And you wouldn't sell them out because you're only going to sell out the big one. But if you got 16,006 for one, 15 for another one, which are your two big ones, and you got 8,500 for the rest of them.
Still 1,000 more people.
That's still 1,000 more people paid in the seats before concessions, which include alcohol over there, that you would get at Rec Hall. So that's there that could improve your bottom line in your sphere. Not going to improve, not going to make you more relevant nationally. It's just not. Like, and I know the wrestling purists will be upset, and well, why don't people? They don't. It doesn't resonate.
And I think we are gripping with this a little bit, maybe with the hockey situation, right? Like, I do think overall for the sport of hockey in the state of Pennsylvania, yes, that was massive. Like 2 weekends ago was massive, right? Or 3. But I do think I think that was what's fascinating about the Gavin McKenna thing, right? Like you really have to go for it for this to work, and they did. And so you are going to cut through that noise going back to him announcing on SportsCenter. But if you went out and got a Porter Martone, I don't know that you're going to cut through that noise in the same way.
No, but wrestling's finals, the Frozen Four is on ESPN, and those highlights are going to be on SportsCenter.
Right.
Wrestling's national championships are on ESPN. Those highlights are not going to be on SportsCenter. Unless somebody does a backflip after they win the national championship, or unless somebody completes a championship season undefeated.
Right.
They're just not going to show minutes of highlights. They will show several minutes of Frozen Four highlights. They just will.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't know the decisions are being made based on that, but I think people have to acknowledge that and understand that.
Right.
That's the difference.
I think that's important. Okay. Let's see. I think the other thing that was interesting to me, let me read through all of my notes here. The way the conference distribution was reported changed. That was notable. And then again, there was a $4 million decrease year over year in concessions, parking, all of that for football. I think that was notable, but I think some of that seems to have changed because of the way the license has opened up. And I wonder if those agreements and those deals, which we've been reported that, a lot of contracts under kind of the year 2 of Pat Kraft, which this would lead into that, had kind of changed coming in. I want to know.
Did any of the
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to know about the $7 of
That was my other
other
question.
operating revenue from field hockey. I want to know what that story is. I want to know how they got that money. I want to know how much of a headache it was to have to file that into the
Oh,
report.
somebody from compliance was standing there when somebody else gave somebody $7 for some drink that the concession stand wasn't open for and didn't want, and they felt like they had to account for it, right? I mean, that to me is the number or numbers like that in all of these reports. We're like, oh, there's all these and they fit in this category. Well, they could fit in this category, and then you've got the $7 that they reported,
There,
right? Which is
there was a negative. There was one. I think it was women's golf. I was looking at the game expenses one. Ben Jones and I were discussing the game expenses one the other day, and I was looking at that. And I think women's golf technically got paid $43 to host to women's golf matches, whatever that means, however that shakes out. So I want to know like what those stories are. We'll never find those out, but I do think that is the fun part of this document.
exactly. I mean, it makes for the people, the three people that come through it, and the people whose livelihood is it to maintain it. Those three, for the three people, it's interesting. For those other people, it's important. And I think that's what makes the year over year stuff interesting. Next year to see what the football NIL ends up being, what the hockey NIL ends up being. Because if it's not big in a certain way, then where did it come from? Like
Right.
the number that they're talking about, people getting paid, isn't made up. Even if it is inflated, it's still large. So if it's not reflected there, then it has to be somewhere else. And that's the challenge with all of this stuff.
No, I think that's yeah. I mean, I think, and that's one of the reasons why we really like focused in on the broader categories this year. At least I did try to of just ticket sales, of just kind of the revenue streams, and how much revenue they made. I think it's unfair to look at even all of the sports and say, um, you know, X and so was profitable, because we can't, for some of the non bigger sports, like they might share an athletic trainer, an equipment person, and all of these other things, and it's like, how are you going to fraction out all of that? So I think that's important. I was surprised, and I did ask about this. I was surprised that travel expenses went down, particularly with the going to the West Coast more often, more
But
frequently.
maybe I saw that in the story, but maybe they started a contract with a carrier,
Yeah,
and they've got like a 5-year deal with whoever the charter company is, and it gives them 5 years of payments at a lower number. That makes sense, right?
yeah,
So, and then that's the kind of stuff they should have. That should happen. You would hope that they are, on the university side, finding enterprise level solutions for things. On this side, finding contracts that are longer term and find you better value and those kind of things.
yeah,
That's what these people whose jobs it is to make that stuff happen, right, along with just accounting for it.
yeah. So the other big thing in next year's report will be some part of James Franklin's buyout. That will be in there, and that'll be
But it was
interesting.
mitigated heavily, so it won't be huge, right? Right.
So that'll be interesting to check out. Yeah, I think all in all,
God forbid they're negative on football. People will be blaming James again for something else.
no, I think people are still blaming James, myself included,
That's
for
what I mean.
various things. Okay. So that was most of the numbers. I know that was a very number heavy centric. We just spent about 30 minutes on that, but that's the financial report. That's something we refer to multiple times throughout the year on this podcast. So I would say it's a pretty important document. Okay. Want to briefly talk about men's hockey. Between the two of us, we've covered a lot of Penn State men's hockey. We've watched a lot of Penn State men's hockey. Can you remember a time where Penn State men's hockey has been this hurt? Would you be interested in playing Penn State men's hockey this season?
I think somebody might, not me, because I can't skate, let alone do that. But I was almost waiting for them to talk about having open tryouts for God. Well, it was the thing that didn't come up today at media for him or this week as you're listening, and it was hinted at early in the season. So, this roster, things could always change. And in the back of my mind, I was like, at what point can you not bring in somebody from the CH? I mean, not that they would at this point, but man, I'm thinking, well, do you want to risk the lawsuit and see who you have who's eligible, who's still playing, who's riding a bench somewhere in the AHL to come back? No, they've never been this. Top three centers that they started the season with, none of them are going to be here this weekend. Might not happen unless maybe Charlie Serrato gets back for postseason. So there's that. There's the other injury. Like, no,
I was trying to like think about it just from the like that standpoint. Um, I went and looked. It was they are 7%. They have 7% less manpower than they did last year, which might not sound like a lot, but then when you like kind of crunch out the numbers, you think about like they they actually had fewer guys this year, like all of these other things. Like I mean, certainly like the Charlie Serrato thing obviously it has hurt them, and it's starting to show up. And it why we bring this up now is because I think it showed up particularly more so on Saturday than it did on Friday. I thought they looked really good on Friday, and then Dane Doyak gets hurt, and it's kind of all she wrote on Saturday. And I think you know that was that's been interesting to watch. And like, can they get like that is the biggest question right now is can they get healthy enough to do anything come a month from now? And it'll be interesting and it'll be tough to see. I still have expectations of them. I think they need to split the Ohio State series, and I think they need to sweep probably that Notre Dame series, even if it is out there. And I think the Wisconsin series, it would be disappointing if they didn't sweep that one as well, with the way Wisconsin season has trended. And you need some momentum going into the postseason as well. No, I just
Especially in a year when the
yeah,
postseason has changed. I
right,
mean, the postseason was gonna seem like it was gonna be to their detriment because they might be the top of the conference, but with the one game stuff in the postseason, that's not as friendly. I mean, maybe it'll help an injured team rest and get some people back if it gets to that point. But yeah, a year ago at this time, they had won 4 in a row and 8 of their previous 10, and now they're sitting on, 3 losses and a tie, and they haven't won because of the schedule being off since January 24th. So it's a little bit different feel. Coach Godowski was all the right things. Today's news conference touched on everything from Formula One, juggling and Formula One, to some football coach speak, to I think his honesty of, hey, this is what it is. We're hurt. We got to play. Other people are hurt. I mean, I think that's what that's the messaging a coach has to have. Um, and I don't think it's BS. It's just it didn't feel possible for them to make the Frozen Four last year at a certain point, even maybe at this point yet, at this time of,
right.
of late February. It feels the same, but for different reasons this year.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I do think I was trying to read because I know this happened out at Arizona State. Greg Powers was talking about how the cap rolls on the not the cap rolls, well, the roster cap rolls
Mhm.
kind of have limited that. I haven't. I have to ask around, and maybe I don't know if you've heard anything, but I don't know what the process is, even for pulling one of the ACHA guys over, which they've done multiple times before. That I think because of that new roster rule, the 26 you got are the 26 you got, and there's not
I
really
think that's
anything else you can do with it this year.
that's my understanding as well, and I think that's the challenge, right? It's just the ice time. It's balancing shifts. It's Yeah, and you've got some workhorses who probably want to be out there more than they should. That you're going to have to reel in and make sure they don't, do more so you can keep them fresh for later in the game, later in the series if it's two game series. So it's for as much as Coach Godowski talks about it being up to the players once the puck drops and they got to do this. Going to be doing a lot of coaching the next couple weeks in terms of managing things from.
Lines and
Yes, exactly. Yep.
I mean, you had Casey Almond playing up, and you had Nick
Well, and
Masher
Nick
playing
Graves too.
in,
So
and like Chinder Graves playing up. Like it just was, yeah, it was interesting. It was I can't remember a time where they've been this injured.
and at the same time, still preaching the same style of play. I mean, because I was what I asked about today. I'm like, okay, so do you talk about this not going across the line and being too aggressive? Do you talk about that? Do you
Right.
remind them, or is it just obvious? You've got less people you can't use, but he's well, we don't really want to back away from it. We want to keep being who we are, but we have to be smart. We can't change. We can't change in the middle of the season who we are and say we're going to do things differently. So it's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
And I do think this weekend with Ohio State at home will be cathartic. Isn't the right word, but I think it'll feel good because you've lost. You had the layoff in between. You had the McKenna drama. You had the I'm certain treatment. I'm certain of how Gavin McKenna was treated, on the road, or at least talked to,
Right.
cheered at, whatever. I think the cheer for him when they lineups are announced, Friday night might be as loud as it's been all season.
Yeah,
And I think that's got to feel good for them, right? I mean, just to get back in that, and that may give them some juice. I think they may need the crowd for as much as they talk about the roar zone and the crowd. And sometimes I think that's, I don't know. I think there's some juice there that they could probably
no,
want to have given to them by the fans this weekend.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think Yost is never an easy place for them to win in. I mean, last year was the first time they won 2 games there in a row ever, right? But I think, I think that there is something there, and I do think that, especially in hockey, above all sports, like I do think, maybe not above football, but I do think there is a home ice advantage that will be welcomed. Yes, the Gavin McKenna latest, of course, is that his trial was moved to March 11th, or his next trial date was moved to March 11th, and of course the felony was dropped. I understand why he was not suspended. I was surprised that he was not suspended from he did conduct detrimental to the team or causing a distraction, but I also understand the admission of guilt that would come from suspending there. If you're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I agree. Like I think they handled that well. I think the timing worked out for them. I mean, I don't know how much was massaged or not because they pushed back the media session that week until what was supposed to be the initial meeting, and then it got postponed. I think they handled it well. I think for as large as the media contingent is of students, right? It's not an adversarial group, so you're not going to get the coach battered by continual questions about it after he makes his statement. I think the social media outrage and search and identification of the other person involved adds a tenor to it that I was a little uncomfortable with, but was also probably tamped down. I mean, there was a local radio station that did one of its weekly poll of, should McKenna, all charges be dropped? I mean, this is college hockey in central Pennsylvania is the question of the day on one of the more conservative, like rural leaning radio stations that does a morning talk show, right? And everybody they had all kinds of respondents, hundreds of respondents, and people who wanted to call in and also tell you what they thought of the other person, and had that person said things about people they loved. So I think it all played out as challenging as it looked like it could have been initially. They kind of skated through that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was bad.
Yeah, sorry. Oops. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, we wanted to discuss that. Anything else? Penn State football wise?
You got Penn State football wise. You have your calendar marked for April.
Yes.
That was hockey.
So
we're jumping to football.
Yeah, the vagueness that I think that's the important quick thing that we can hit on here. There will be a blue-white weekend. Will there be a game? We don't know. Do we have any other information other than the fact that there's something happening at Beaver Stadium on April 25th? That's it. That's all we know. Weird, odd. I think it's more so a symptom of just hiring a coach not that long ago. I think that would be the main thing. And then I think the Beaver Stadium Fun Run is the next day. Well, so at least we're continuing on with those community events. I think that's important.
And if he didn't know early, it took a couple of days. I think Matt Campbell and maybe his closest friends and family learned that Penn State football is bigger than what they might have known as a result of this. I think it's easy at Iowa State to say, hey, no, we're not doing spring game. Not going to get people hurt. Not going to do whatever. As for all of the darts that people wanted to throw at James Franklin, he understood that the community needed this. For my knocks, hey, he's not doing enough for the community. The community expects this event to happen. The hotelers, the restaurateurs expect this event to happen. And it is indeed your responsibility, unfortunately or unfortunately, as Penn State Athletics, to make sure this event happens. Make sure you do something that's interesting that gets 40,000 people in there that's at least interested. I hope, and Russ pointed this out to me in a call, so credit to Russ, although I was thinking it too. If Rocco Beck needs practice in front of 50,000 people, even though he's not healthy, to feel comfortable, then that's not a good sign. Like he should be. But the coach may need to feel what those logistics are. It would be okay for them to ride the bus to get off the bus, to do the entry. So he feels like what that is, to put the headsets on, to walk, to hear 40,000 or 45,000 people or 60 if it's great weather, what that cheer sounds like coming out. So he knows, oh, wow, I wonder what 105 is going to sound like with Marshall if this is what 60 sounds like on a Saturday in April. So I think it's almost more important operationally for the football program, and definitely more important for the community that this happens. And I think if they didn't know that when they got here, someone probably said, hey, this got to happen. Like, let's figure out how you want to do it. This got to happen.
I think that the operational piece of it, right? Like something as simple and silly as Rocco Beck knowing where to look where the play clock is and knowing that that's where the play clock is so that it's not moving from where it will be in a few weeks, to your point of what the game day flow of because Penn State does have like that unique situation of getting some of its players getting ready. Well, I guess they don't do that anymore, but they used to get ready elsewhere, and now they just take the bus over, and like that whole process. And I think to me that is maybe more important than anything that actually happens football.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say traditions and show videos, but I think operationally, for them, that might be the most important part. Not that they couldn't practice it without a crowd. Let's go get in the buses. Let's do this. But do it with the people there. Yeah. Give people that thing. Give that little kid who 2 years ago got yelled at by Cale Sander for doing We Are in Rec Hall and is now old enough to stand along Porter Road and cheer for the buses to come by. Give him that thrill to see the people step off the bus and do that.
You are so.
I got a drum, man. That one. I gotta have that kid's back. Come on.
You are so. Okay. Well, nonetheless, here we are. Anything else you want to add, Blue White Weekend?
No, I'm excited for it. Glad it's on the calendar. Doesn't conflict with what Susan has at Notre Dame. So that's a good weekend that's a win for us.
It does conflict with something else though.
What?
The NFL draft in Pittsburgh. I thought that was mildly.
But the draft starts Thursday night.
Sure. Right. It's not like Saturday of the draft is not that big of a deal.
But Blue White has fallen during the draft before.
But the draft has never happened in the state of Pennsylvania before.
Well, that's true.
So that's what I
Philly.
think is.
Did it happen the same weekend as the Philly one a couple years ago?
Did the draft happen in Philly? I don't remember that one.
Yep. Oh, yeah, yes. Yep.
Okay. I don't want to look at that one.
Art Museum up on the top. Yes, it did. But I don't know if it happened the same weekend, but it did happen. If it has happened in Philly, it's been like 6 years now, maybe 5.
I have to look that one.
Okay. It did.
Okay. Anyways. So there's that. All right. I have eBay open right now. There's a couple things on Lions here, plus I'm looking at. There is one kind of cool thing, but I'm not going to say what it is in case I decide to bid on it. But you said you've been buying some antique stuff. What have you been?
I bought 2 things in the past 6 months.
Antique games?
Board games.
Yeah.
Board games. One is called Basket, Basket, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them on eBay. It is the OG of interactive basketball games with little metal flip handles that shoot a ping pong ball up into a basket backboard, and you keep track of the score. Like I had cousins who had that. That was a great game. And you could shoot long range, you could shoot layups. It's got to use the right tension to flip the little ball up. Then the other one, I think they were.
Go ahead.
I
was just saying, I have it up here on my screen. It appears to be some cardboard.
Yep.
Some holes.
It's a regular board size box, and there's holes in the floor that the ping pong ball, you drop the ball for the tip off.
Okay.
It rolls into one of the holes, and then you pull the little lever back, kind of like tabletop hockey sort of.
Sure.
You pull the lever back, and it shoots the ball up in the air, and you can play a game against someone or with yourself. And I think it was made by Cadco.
Yep.
And that same company made a baseball game that wasn't. I never did I don't do fantasy baseball now, and I didn't do whatever one of the old. I forget what the one other old school
Stratomatic
kind of fantasy. I never did Stratomatic.
Okay.
But I did Major League Baseball from Cadco, and it had little round cards, and you spun, and it would come up with players, and you could put a lineup of players in, and it had like Wrigley Field as the outfield with the scoreboard there. So those are both the same company. So I bought a couple of those, one of each in the past 6, maybe 7 months now, just because I found like they were a bargain and was thinking, that's cool. So my question was for old young guy, is there an old game now that you would track down, or is it old? I don't know. Is it in a game system? Probably
not board game. I would say it. Yeah. I have bought old video games before.
Okay.
but I don't know that I've ever bought a board game. I'm trying to think. I mean, I bought a new. I was still in high school. I bought Stratomatic Baseball because I thought it was cool. So I still have that somewhere. I'm trying to think. I don't know that I've ever bought a game on eBay, but I know I've bought like old systems of like a
Mhm.
system that I still have, but they just don't make games for it anymore. I was like, oh, I would like
Yep.
to have this game, or it's been lost to time and moves, etc. I'm trying to think. I feel like we have been very like we do not play a lot of board games. Most of our games we play here are like card adjacent games, so like Rummy Cube, I would say, or like
Mhm.
we play like Scrabble, which I guess Scrabble would be a word game, but then there's also Bananagrams, which is like Scrabble, but there is no board. Um, no, I'm trying to think if there is one. Mousetrap comes to mind. That would be the
Okay.
one. That one. Um, and what was the game? Was it Trouble or Sorry? There was the
Little
little
popper in the
bubble in the
middle.
middle, and you popped it, and
I
the
think
dice
that's.
rolled.
I don't know which one that is. They
It
both
was
feel the
Trouble.
same
I
to
think it
me.
was Trouble.
Yeah.
Let's look.
Okay. Well, that's. I figured it might lean more toward computer games. I didn't. I mean, our kids. We had we. One time 10 years ago was a Christmas present, or maybe more at this point, probably 15 years ago. And then we didn't have Atari. My one cousin and I both had what was it's called Intellivision. I think it was Mattel, and that was it wasn't it was better than Atari because it had more sports games, but it was fewer people had it. Like it was like a little more niche kind of thing. So
So are you what are you doing with these? What do
they're
you
sitting in the closet. I will
Okay.
pop them out for the grandkids at someday to ruin or play with or say, "Oh my God, that's just so lame. Why would you ever have played that
Okay.
game?"
That's what I was
Yeah,
curious
yeah,
about.
no, yeah, no, no, I'm
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Or if if maybe now that I've talked about it, maybe some weekend when Susan's at Notre Dame and if we're still between YouTube TV or something, there's nothing on, maybe I'll sit down at the kitchen table and play a
Entertain
game of
yourself.
basket. Exactly.
Proud of you.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. There's a couple other things online. Surplus seems like they added some Penn State or Beaver Stadium things. That's all I'll say.
I
If
was gonna
you
say, don't tell people; they'll be upping the price on you.
there's a
Don't even look too close to the screen. Maybe
there's a
somebody would zoom in and see the reflection in
of
your
my
eyes.
eyes. There is like a restroom sign, which I just think I would spend. That would be cool. Um, there's various weird art. Anyways, yeah, that's this week's show. I know it was very number heavy. I know it was very slightly nerdy, but that's this week's show. I'll probably write something this week. See how the Olympics turn out. We might have our we will at worst have Penn State's first ever silver medalist in an Olympic event, a Winter Olympic event, and potentially at best a first ever gold medal. Penn State will effectively quadruple or triple its number of gold medals or of medals in winter games that it's had. Learned that research on that. I think that's cool. Shout out to Dan Barefoot for finishing, I think, 12th overall in the skeleton.
Johnstown Day. There you go. Yep.
So I think that's an interesting thing. So anyways, have something this week eventually, at some point. Um, you can find that on the website called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called with.
Steve.
Anything from you this week? We'll see.
Maybe some hockey finally.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Um, let's see. Website. We've got a podcast which you've listened to. 5 stars, thumbs up. Really appreciate that. We have a newsletter. If you want to subscribe to that, we just kind of sometimes we shoot out the same stories that you can read, but gets you more direct to your inbox. We have that. Be sure to do that. We email. My email, if you want to email me, it's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. If you want to email Steve,
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
perfect. And then if you want to find me on the internet, find me at Stuff Summer Says. You've been Steve.
At Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.